The myth of King Minos, unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. The year is 3200 BC, and for centuries there has been war between the people of the south and the people of the north. The land of Kemet, or as it is known today, Egypt, was divided into two separate regions, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. The division was caused by the many natural obstacles that presented themselves along the Nile River. The river's periodic flooding made travel difficult and dangerous, and so the various regions remained largely isolated from one another. But the most important obstacle was the cataract region at the southernmost point of the Nile, which could only be crossed by traveling around the first cataract, a journey of about 8 days. This geographical separation resulted in a cultural separation as well. And so, when the people of Upper Egypt were united under one king, and then subsequently conquered Lower Egypt, they became known as the kings of Upper and Lower Egypt, respectively. By the end of the Old Kingdom period, the nomarchs, or officials of Upper Egypt, were beginning to use the title king. By contrast, the rulers of Lower Egypt still preferred the title of king. So we get our first dual king list, kings of Upper and Lower Egypt. These titles, however, did not have any official bearing on their status or authority. That would change with the rise of Mentuhotep II. After a brief period of civil war, Mentuhotep II re-established order throughout Egypt. He campaigned north and south, subduing rebel nomarchs. As the last king of the 11th dynasty, he also became the first king of a unified Egypt since King Nama, nearly 2,000 years earlier. Now holding both titles, King of Upper and Lower Egypt, Mentuhotep II established his capital at Thebes and began the Middle Kingdom period. His successors continued to rule over this reunited Egypt for the next 3 centuries until the 12th dynasty came to an end. Welcome back to the channel. Today we will look at the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under King Minos. Now let's get back to the video. After the fall of the 11th dynasty, Egypt descended once again into civil war. Nomarchs took advantage of the central government's weakness and declared independence. One nomarch even seized Thebes, the traditional seat of power in Upper Egypt. For the next few decades, Thebes was ruled by a series of local warlords until a man named Intef emerged to challenge them. Intef managed to restore order in Upper Egypt, but he didn't stop there. He marched north to conquer Lower Egypt, where he defeated the rebel nomarchs and restored Ma'at, or order throughout the land. Intef held both titles, King of Upper and Lower Egypt, and thus became the first king to officially unite the country since King Nama. However, Intef's successors would lose Lower Egypt just a century later, leading to a renewed split in the kingdom. It would take another 40 years for Egypt to be reunified, this time by a king named Mentuhotep II. Like Intef, Mentuhotep II was originally the nomarch of Thebes. When the nomarchs of Thebes and Akhmim allied to invade Lower Egypt, Mentuhotep aligned himself with the nomarchs of Abydos and Heracleopolis to counter this threat. After defeating his enemies, he set his sights on conquering the rest of Upper Egypt, which he did without much difficulty. Turning his attention to the north, he crossed the first cataract and headed toward the Delta region. Here, he faced off against the nomarch of Heracleopolis, whom he defeated and killed. He then did the same to the nomarchs of the other northern cities, bringing all of Egypt under his rule. Mentuhotep II held both the title Kings of Upper and Lower Egypt, which signified his authority over the entire kingdom. In fact, the title became official during his reign, and all subsequent kings were required to hold both titles. He also used the royal Horus name Ka and the royal Kaperet name Mentuhotep. His Kaperet name literally means he who gives life to the Ka. In ancient Egyptian religion, the Ka was the vital force that resided in the body and ensured one's immortality. So this name suggests that the king was responsible for ensuring the prosperity and eternal life of Egypt. It is also possible that it refers to his revival of Egypt as a united kingdom. Following his campaigns, Egypt enjoyed a long period of peace and prosperity known as the Middle Kingdom, which lasted for the next 3 centuries. Egypt was once again divided into a central administration, and provincial governors, nomarchs, ran their areas with little interference from the king. Although the Middle Kingdom would eventually collapse due to outside pressures, Egypt as a united kingdom would never split again. As I mentioned before, Mentuhotep used the royal Horus name Ka and the royal Kaperet name Mentuhotep. This practice of having 2 royal names was started by King Intef and would continue for several dynasties. Royal names were given to kings to commemorate certain events or periods in their lives, or to emphasize certain aspects of their personality. The use of 2 names was probably an attempt to legitimize the king's claim to both Upper and Lower Egypt. The Horus name was usually written above the king's name and symbolized his divine kingship. The Kaperet name, on the other hand, was usually written below the king's name and represented his human side. These names were often inscribed on the king's monuments and sarcophagus, and they helped to identify him. So if you wanted to know who a particular monument was built for, you just had to look for the royal names. In addition to having 2 names, the kings of Egypt also had 2 main residences, one in the south at Thebes and one in the north at the royal city of Akhmim. They alternated between these 2 cities every 6 months. This practice may have been motivated by geography and climate, because Thebes was closer to the source of the Nile and had a milder climate, while Akhmim was further down the river, where the climate was hotter. Alternating residences was also common among the kings of Nubia, and it spread to the kingdoms of Kush and Aksum after the Egyptians had adopted it. Even though Egypt was now reunited, the division between north and south still existed. The people of Lower Egypt still considered themselves to be culturally superior to those of the south, and they viewed the kings from Upper Egypt as second-class citizens. Even though Mentuhotep II was the first king of a unified Egypt, he too was looked down upon by the northerners. In fact, none of the kings from Upper Egypt were accepted as legitimate rulers of Lower Egypt until King Amenemhat III, who was the grandson of Mentuhotep II. Speaking of family, there is some debate over whether Mentuhotep II was related to Intef. It seems likely that they were related somehow, since Mentuhotep's mother was the daughter of a king, and Intef was the son of a nomarch. So they could have been uncle and nephew, or perhaps first cousins. What is known is that Mentuhotep's father was a man named Semu, who was the nomarch of Thebes. Semu was granted the title Major of the Crown by King Intef, which meant that he was next in line to inherit the throne. When Intef died, his heir, Senusret, took the throne as the first king of the 12th dynasty. Senusret ruled over a peaceful Egypt and brought great prosperity to the kingdom. However, his successors would prove to be less capable rulers. By the end of the 12th dynasty, Egypt had split into 3 regions. The northern part of the kingdom broke away and became known as the Kingdom of Thebes. Meanwhile, a new kingdom arose in the south, known as the Kingdom of Kush. But it wasn't all bad news. The Middle Kingdom would soon come to an end, and Egypt would enter its empire-building phase, which would last for the next 4 centuries. To learn more about that, stay tuned for future episodes. So do you think it was a good thing for Egypt to be reunited? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching.